Okay, if we're ready to start. This is the July 28th meeting of Lafayette Design Review Commission, and we can start with the roll call. Commissioner Hadaloo?
Here.
Commissioner Seidel?
Here.
And John Gray is here. Our Chair Cass and Vice Chair Sim are absent this evening. Do we have a motion to adopt this evening's agenda?
All motion.
And I second.
Okay, we have to call the roll then. Armin?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
And John is aye. Public comments for items not on this agenda, but within our purview. Nancy, is anybody raising their hand for public comment?
No.
Okay, well then moving on to consent calendar, there are no items. Study session, the next agenda item, there is nothing, which brings us to our agenda this evening. We have two continued public hearings. The first one being HPD 14-21 Diamond Construction for 77 Lucas Ranch Road. So Nancy, would you like to start?
Sure. It's actually a new item. I think the agenda might have put it under the wrong header.
Well, it's continued hearing in Lafayette, but not with the Design Review Commission. It's been with the Planning Commission.
Yes. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. The item before you is Hillside Development Permit Application HDP 1421 for 77 Lucas Ranch Road, Lot 6 in the Lucas Ranch Estate Subdivision. The applicant is seeking a Phase 2 Hillside Development and Design Review permits. It's Phase 1 siding and massing, and their grading permits were approved last week by the Planning Commission, and they are still under the required 14-day appeal period. The subject property is one of 8 lots within the approximately 90-acre subdivision approved in 2006. It is just under 4.5 acres. It is zoned LR10 and within the Hillside Overlay District. The project proposes construction of a 4,800 square foot, 1-story single-family residence and a detached 476 square foot Class A accessory dwelling unit on the vacant lot with the max height of 19 feet 8 inches. Here are the elevations of the previous and the current proposal side by side. And this is a comparison of the building data changes from their Phase 1 siding and massing and their preliminary design proposed back in 2016. Overall, the impervious surface, building footprint, gross floor area, and height in feet and story have been reduced, even with the addition of the detached EDU. The building has been shifted slightly up the hillside, and the overall top elevation is higher than the previous proposal. However, the applicant has demonstrated that even with the changes, the project remains minimally visible. It's low profile, single-story residence, and it meets the Lucas Ranch Estates design guidelines, which were included in your packet, with respect to horizontal form, blending with the topography, activity spaces, privacy, and materials. Per the city's landscape consultant comments, some landscaping modifications are recommended for more native planting, screening, and natural arrangement. Staff recommends that the Design Review Commission conduct a public hearing, review the project, and adopt Resolution 2021-09, approving as final action for the application subject to conditions. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Kristen or Armin, questions?
No.
I do have a couple. The first, I guess, was just a clarification rather than a question, just for those who may be listening. Our scope this evening, as the Design Review Commission, is not to evaluate siding or massing generally, but rather articulation, finishes, landscape. The Planning Commission has already approved the latter. Question then for you, Nancy. I did notice that the fire district has written in the material that you shared with us that it appears that the access is not compliant with their requirements. So our approval is would not be to recognize that. The applicant would be expected to correct that outside this process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I had one specific question on the landscape consultant's recommendation. Something appears to be incomplete. If you look at just, I think it's the very last page of the packet you shared with us, item 11 in her letter is incomplete. So we just need a clarification on what was requested there. It's like the sentence just was not finished. It says all proposed oaks outside the building pad are specified as 15-gallon size, while interior trees are specified as 24-inch or 36-inch box. Please. It doesn't say please what.
I don't know what they were getting at, but I can check in with them after the meeting if that's something that you want as a condition.
In general, yeah, I would like to know what's recommended here. And finally, a condition of approval is that an irrigation plan is supplied, but I did not see an irrigation plan in the materials that you shared. Do we have one?
If they're not shown on the plans, then they were not included.
So that may be an unmet condition now. We'll see if the applicant can respond.
Okay.
Okay, nothing further. Thank you. So now if the applicant, if the applicant is available to make their presentation, would you invite them to do so?
There's Jeffrey Stone and Michael Gale, the architect.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Jeff Stone. I'm a principal of Diamond Construction. I've been the developer at Lucas Ranch. I've built the lower 5, and now we're working through the upper phase of the project. Thank you for the time this evening. I want to commend staff on the staff report. I think it was highly organized and addressed all the issues for design review, as well as the planning commission in a way. So thank you very much, Nancy, for that. Jumping right into the issues, and then as you spoke, I took the notes on it. You made it clear that this isn't a scope to go over siding and massing, so I won't waste time, but I will address quickly that this is a 4.5 acre site. It is in a long downhill driveway. The fire issue I will handle. Obviously, I can't get my improvement plans and build a home unless I have the fire approval, which is always handled as a secondary issue. The just high level, what I do want to discuss is that these 2 lots that we're talking tonight were the most contentious over the 22-year period before I came into Lucas Ranch. There were a few downslope neighbors that were very frustrated with not only the size of the homes, the articulations, the lack of privacy that they would put on their properties. And when I took over the properties and really started understanding and isolating where we were going to not only put the homes, but where they were going to sit, it was in primary concern of making sure that there was a win-win from off-site views. I took lot 6 from 9,300 square feet of impervious surface to 5,500 square feet. I took the gross floor area from 8,700 square feet to 5,200 square feet, which includes the 861 square foot garage. The primary home on this property is 395 square feet with an ADU of 476 square feet. So if you take off the ADU, and I always like to come to design review with what I intend to build, not go and actually go get a secondary approval on an ADU separately. We're truly looking at a 3,900 square foot home compared to 8,700 square feet that was before this commission before and got approval, or at least through phase 1. There's a maximum height before of 30 feet, 29.6, and we're at 19 feet 8 inches. The scale, the design, the privacy, everything in alignment, I think fits in with what we're trying to build in Lafayette. I'm very proud of what we've designed here. I think it's a well-designed home that Michael put a lot of passion into, that had multiple iterations so that we could truly understand that the function, the aesthetic, and the general maintenance for whoever decides to live in this property is well balanced with not only Lucas Ranch, but everyone that lives in the corridor up that Las Trampas hillside. I'll have Michael now speak to the physicality of the property. And the last thing I'll say is an irrigation plan. I've gone through, I've built a lot of homes in Lafayette. It's the first time I've been asked for an irrigation plan by the city of Lafayette. So I would never do hydro zones and irrigation plans as a landscape before I know that I have an approved home. That would be too costly on an applicant, frankly, and which would need to change on multiple iterations. With MWELO requirements and East Bay Mud applications of new water meters, it's required of me to not only provide not only an irrigation plan, but also the hydro zone calculations so that East Bay Mud can determine my domestic and fire demand. So that will be produced. I've not produced that as of yet because I work through design review and then get into my working set of drawings. But I'm happy to make that a condition of approval before we pull permit or something else. But in county as well as Lafayette, this is a first for me to hear that that's a requirement. Michael?
Hi there, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Is it okay if I, yes, I have control. Sorry. Let me do it right now. Okay. Can everybody see this screen here?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So just real quick, I'm going to run through a very simple design strategy and touch on a few elements. And I understand we will not be talking about siding and massing because that was already done last week. So very simply, the house was pushed back to help protect the views from below. The house is basically designed as a linear bar, this red line here that's tucked against the hill. And then off of that, there's these two sort of angled rooms. One is the public space, the living room, dining room. The other is the master suite. And those create a private courtyard. So there's a little bit of separation between public and private just from a design point of view. And then you have views into those spaces. So when you're looking downhill, you kind of see the back bar. This is for lot 4 and 6. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me just do that right now. So looking at this landscape plan, I just want to point out that lot 4 and 7 are to the left and right, respectively. So when they look down on this site, they will tend to see this back bar. And that's why we've made a pretty good effort with the landscape architect to try to obscure that facade. I mean, a few feet of it is already tucked into the hill. It does have a low pitched roof, and then we're planting kind of heavily along that hillside. So you're never going to see this long bar from above. It'll be obstructed by trees. And then from below, these two blue angles are pretty much all you would ever see from downhill. So, and then those are also fairly well protected by these 3 or 4 trees on the bottom. So from a siting point of view and just overall design, we tried to make this house hidden as much as possible and still create nice, pleasant spaces for the future inhabitants. Jump back to the materiality of the house. It's a very simple house, trying to use some kind of lighter earth tones to blend into the hillside, because although we always show it as green, we all know that most of the time, or at least 3/4 of the year, Lafayette is pretty light, almost like a blonde color with the dry grasses. So this type of wood is proposed as vertical siding. Again, a light color stucco, and then a kind of a dark highlight will be around the windows, or some of the eaves and some of the trellis work will be this kind of dark gray color. Again, much of it is earthy tones and sort of medium to dark palette. The rest of this is more about comparing to the old project, which I don't think we need to discuss tonight. So I think that's it. Thank you all.
Are there any public comments on this project? Is there anybody calling in, Nancy?
No, there are no public comments.
Okay, in that case, questions from commissioners. Kristen?
I don't have any questions.
No, Armin, questions? I don't have any either. With no need for rebuttal, We'll just move right on to commissioner comments. Do either of you feel like starting? Kristen, then why don't you start, please?
Well, thank you for the very clear presentation. Even though we aren't talking about siting and massing today, I do think that it's well sited and located within the downslope. And I think that that does a lot to make me feel comfortable with a lot of the other decisions about material articulation and detail at the various volumes of the house as well as the aperture. So overall, I like the material palette. I think it's consistent with what I understand the standards here to be at this particular development. I think it will blend in well with the surrounding landscape of those golden hills that we have 3/4 of the year. And I appreciate that there is a modulation between the wood as well as the stucco so that it's not excessively massive or monolithic. So overall, I'm in support of the proposal.
Thank you. Armin, comments?
Sure. I agree with what Kristen said. I like the material palette, and I think it's very, the colors are very subtle, and it sits well with the landscape and the hill behind it. And I'm in support of the proposed design too.
Okay, thanks very much. So in general, I would agree with Armin and Kristen's comments. I think the house does feel very compatible with its site and the surrounding landscape. A couple of minor comments. First, the metal roof material. The renderings certainly make it appear to be a sort of a flat, low luster type finish, and that I'm sure is your intent. I would like to make sure, though, that we should see an actual material sample and make sure there's not tendency for any sun reflection. Just once we get there, I'm sure that that is your intent. And finally, the city landscape consultant made some recommendations. I don't think any were too severe or burdensome. I hope you agree. But I thought they made a lot of sense and would suggest that conditions of approval include accepting the recommendations of the city landscape consultant. There was one comment, as I pointed out, that needs a little clarification. But the one that I felt was most relevant was screening on the north side of the house. The north elevation is very simple and plain, and maybe that's okay. But I believe some additional screening, especially from lot 4, would be helpful. So with that, if there's nothing further, Nancy, you have a draft resolution for us?
I do. It is part of the packet, resolution 2021-09.
So do we have a motion on the draft resolution?
I motion to adopt it.
You're muted, but I think you said something, Armin.
I second.
I motion to adopt it.
Okay, yeah, okay, and we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Do you want the landscape consultant comments to be part of that, because it was not included as part of the conditions of approval?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that it was my mistake. Yeah, please. I thought that the landscape consultant's comments were relevant, and I would like them to be included, please. Is there any objection from on the part of the applicant? Anything that you feel is onerous?
Timing of the irrigation plan. It's more precedent going forward that I'm concerned with than I am on this application, because I'll have it done. Just that it doesn't become a standard on applications at this design phase that we have to provide hydrozone calculations on plans that we don't know if they're going to be approved. I think should be
okay. Well, then let me ask. This is then a question to staff. The conditions of approval listed in the information that the city staff provided us included that an irrigation plan for both of these projects was to be reviewed concurrently with the design review, and led me to believe that I expected to see it here. Was that correct or not correct?
That's correct. That condition of approval was part of the subdivision approval required for subsequent applications, including us.
So, I mean, this can be an additional condition of approval now, as far as in my judgment. But is that not consistent with direction received from Planning Commission?
No, it would be fine.
Okay, so an ongoing condition of approval, I think, is fine.
Can I ask when that condition of approval is supposed to be fulfilled? Is that prior to issuance or is that prior to frame? Can we be specific of when that part of the project is to be supplied? The only reason I'm asking that is a lot of times I will add additional trees and planting once I've built a foundation and stand up my walls, because only then I'm truly able to visualize, like I'm doing on lot 2, where I'm putting larger oaks into the side that I sometimes wait. I'm not trying to be a pain in your butt. I'm trying to actually, I think about these things and I try to actually be thoughtful in my approach with it. So if it could be a condition of approval at framing, that still allows us to see the rest of the actual building, because I always add extra trees, which would then be approved as far as my hydrozone calculations, which would go to East Bay Mud. So I would prefer it. If not, I will provide it before issuance.
Generally, it's at building issuance, but it's up to the discretion of the Design Review Commission.
I feel a little bit like we're out of our zone here. I would accept staff's recommendation on how to handle that.
I will too.
Then I think it'd be acceptable for the pull-down framing.
Okay. Okay, so if that can be incorporated into the resolution, are we ready to vote? Kristen?
Am I voting? Yes, aye.
Armin?
Aye.
And John is aye. Okay, great, thank you.
So clarification, so for the resolution and conditions of approval, I'm going to amend it to add the irrigation plan as a hold framing, and then to incorporate the landscape consultant's recommendations as well. Okay.
Great, thanks, Nancy. And with that, we're ready to move on to your next project.
Thank you all. Before we move on, we appreciate it.
So Nancy, I don't know if our applicant can stay in as a panelist or not. That's up to you. Typically, no. We'll expect, we've got the 66 Lucas Ranch Road property at lot 4 is the next project to look at.
This item is Hillside Development Permit HDP 1521 for 66 Lucas Ranch, also within the same subdivision, known as Lot 4. Like the previous application, the applicant is also seeking Phase 2 Hillside Development and Design Review permits. It's Phase 1 siting and massing and grading, and also an exception to the ridgeline setback was approved last week by Planning Commission and also is under the 14-day appeal period. The property is zoned LR10 within the Hillside Overlay District, and much of it is within the Class 2 ridgeline setback. The project proposes construction of a 5,380 square foot, 2-story single-family residence with a maximum building height of 21 feet 8 inches. Here's a comparison of the building data changes from the 2016 Phase 1 approval and what they're proposing now. Although the overall building height has been reduced, the project still proposes 2 levels rather than the previous 1-story over partially exposed basement. The current design proposes a 700 square foot 2nd-story addition on the building's northeast side. At its hearing last week, Planning Commission reviewed the massing and deemed that the modified massing to reduce it to 1 story wasn't necessary, since the project is minimally visible from the downhill and a superior option to the alternatives explored by the applicant. So no modification to reduce it to 1 story was required. The commission commended the applicant for significantly reducing the massing from the 2016 approved Phase 1 proposal and incorporating it well with the hill to make it less intrusive considering the lot's topography and visibility. The proposed residence is modern in design, proposes stepping with the hillside, particularly with the upper level to minimize its visibility. The project meets the Lucas Ranch design guidelines, respect to profile, subordinate secondary projections, privacy, and materials. And per the city's landscape consultant comments, some landscaping modifications are recommended regarding irrigation, retaining walls, and additional planting. Staff recommends the Design Review Commission conduct a public hearing, review the project, and adopt Resolution 2021-10, approving as final action for the applicant subject to conditions. This concludes my presentation.
Okay, would the applicant like to present, please?
Good evening again. I will, out of the 8 lots, this one I was most excited of for a variety of reasons. I love Las Trampas from a hiking standpoint. I've been on the board of Save Mount Diablo for 7 years now. I've worked with Las Trampas Land Trust, and from the view shed and the connectivity of La Miranda back to what the Land Trust is doing at Carr Ranch, all the way through the hillsides of Moraga. It's a very, very unique view shed of Las Trampas in that valley. And this particular lot is perched up, and I wanted to, and one of the first things when I brought Michael into this project was talking about flat roofs and the materiality, because we've all seen the examples through the tunnel of when these houses are up there, them really standing out. I also want Nancy, thank you again for the staff report. I thought it was very spot on to the intent of what we were trying to provide. I'm a little more passionate about this particular house than I normally am. I've been wanting to design and build some modern homes in Lafayette for years. Unfortunately, it took me about 12 years to get here, where I was I was helping be a part of a team that could start forming some of this direction. And I think this is a higher quality level design that is being brought to Lafayette and can show, while we have this massive migration from San Francisco and the South Bay into our East Bay County, that we can provide the quality of architecture that is both artistic but humbling to look at from outside the hills. Again, I reduced this home. This home is still a large home by my own admission. It's still 5,300 square feet, but I did remove 3,300 square feet off of the previous design. Although it's framed as the first lounge was a story with a basement. If you look at the front elevation, which I'm sure Michael will, it was a 2-story home in the way that they put it and cut it into the hillside. And then the only side I'll prove that by is the height of that building was 26 feet from the midpoint slope roof. And this building is 21 feet, 8 inches. Again, I met with neighbors and went over the plan because I knew that this one was going to be the one that stood out the most out of all the projects at Lucas Ranch. And through those meetings, we were able to discuss and determine, and the siding and massing on this one is very important for you to look at, because we took what would have moved that entire project around the corner of the hillside so that the view shed looked back to Moraga. We brought it all back to where the streets were so that the overall cross section, when you're looking from the downhill side or Las Trampas, is back around. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present this home. I love this one. I'll let Michael explain what he's done. He's the true artist here.
All right, let me share the screen. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Okay, everybody, let me just start off real quick with some background information. The previous design is the blue, and this is what Jeff was referring to. It used to be further downhill. It was wider, and it extended around the corner, making it more visible from downhill. The site strategy for this was kind of to push it back up into the hill, and at the same time kind of vary the mass in this somewhat of an arc shape so that you have views all around. but more importantly, when viewed from somewhere else back to the site, the massing is broken into pieces. So you don't get a big long facade, you don't get any big tall elements. There's a bunch of separate little boxes, if you will, that are kind of broken apart. This is just a comparison of the sizes of the two houses. And then again, this is the sort of broken up facade in the red versus the sort of linear planes of wall in the previous design. Just real quick, Jeff mentioned the facade of the old house. So it had this big barrel roof that was pushed forward. You can see in these sections that kind of outline the profile. The previous design was quite pushed forward towards the edge of the hill. The current design is stepping with the hill and kind of moves up behind it. And it just creates a much lower profile, again, when viewed from off-site. So viewed from lot 6 or viewed from down the hill or from the horse ranch on Aurora Drive, it's a very low profile. I'll run through these kind of quickly. I did these for the Planning Commission, but these are just some views coming up the road within Lucas Ranch development, what you're going to see when you approach the house. And so around here at sorry, Jeff, I don't remember the name of the lots, but I think this is 3 and 5 down here. When you come around, this is what you'll see. You'll see a very tiny bit. And then as you get closer, you do start to see the pop-up of that second story. But there's not really a moment where you ever see a 2-story building, except at the driveway. And at that one moment, you will see the full height of the building, but you can clearly see it stepping down. And this front edge fairly well blocks the back of the house from below. So when you're looking up, the second story is so far into the hill, you don't really see it. And then I just want to point out, this is a site section of the entire property. You can go all the way down towards Aurora Drive. And you can see the small piece up here is the project, the Lot 4 house. And there's a little bit of a rise here at the bottom of the road that goes down to Lot 6. And that actually helps us quite a bit. So when you're down at the horse ranch and you look back up, that rise is here and it blocks most of the house. It's very, very difficult to see. So it's been lowered, pushed back, and it's hard to see from anywhere down below. So from a landscape point of view, I just brought in the planting plan to show that we're again trying to buffer the top of the hill here. And there's a few trees over here to the right that will block it when you're coming up from internal, within the site of Lucas Ranch when you're coming around the road. These trees will block that second story. And then from looking up from down below, you'll have a few extra trees down here to help obscure some of the driveway area and some of the massing that does stick out a little bit, which is the kitchen component. Lastly, the materiality. The main lower facade has a similar kind of a sort of medium brown wood color. And then the roof areas and the edge are sort of a darker brown. I went with this kind of mocha color and then again a more bronze type for the mullions and then for the roof edges. Again, earth tones, try to blend into the hill. I think this house will be very difficult to see from pretty much anywhere else. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Nancy, are there any public comments?
No, there are none.
Okay, well then with that, commissioner comments, Armin, would you like to start?
Sure. So I think with the changes made to the house and the design of the house, it nestles very well in the hill. And I appreciate that you showed the views and the Google Earth from down the hill and from up there as you are approaching the house. And the terracing idea, I think, really helps to just break up the massing and just stepping down. And the same with the previous project, I like the material palette. I think it's compatible with the site and landscape.
Okay, thanks, Armin. Kristen?
I agree with Armin's comments. I think the home is well sited into these rolling hills. I think the improvements made since the previous design in terms of the siding are strong, as well as the shift to the flat roof versus the sort of barrel vault roof. I appreciate, Jeff, that you want to bring modern design and demonstrate that modern design is good design and that the language of architecture is one that can evolve through the ages and through the time. So I am delighted actually to see a modern design that steps so well with its massing into the hill, that blends into the setting, both in its formal solution and in its material solutions. In terms of the two-story character of the building, I think that it works well with the overall topography there. And I think it is further tempered, even though I don't so much have a concern with the two-story condition, but it's further tempered by the horizontal lines that are consistent across the building, as well as the way the materials are realized on the facades. So I think it's a clear and effective design that responds well to the siting as well as to the design standards.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. My comments, I agree with both Armin and Kristen about the general quality of the design. It's a very elegant house. It's nice to see. The one comment I would add, similar to the previous one, and maybe part of it is your elevations. Your south elevation in particular does not represent any of the tree screening that's in front of the house, and it's hard to really tell. But I think the view of this from lot 6 down the hill, maybe there's not enough privacy there, and the city landscape consultants' recommendations, I think, were specific to that as well. So I think a little more screening and demonstration of screening on the south side, the downhill side, is something that may already be in your design. I saw it on some of your images. It seemed like it was there and some not. And that would be to screen the lower retaining wall and the house itself. But I think it's a nice design solution. So thank you. So with that, are we, Kristen, Armin, you've seen the draft resolution. The draft resolution did include a recommendation to incorporate the recommendations of the city landscape consultant. Was there anything else to add?
Yeah, I did have a question about it. Apparently there were some recommendations about retaining walls, and I don't remember them specifically. I'm wondering if we could just have some information about that. Is it, I could probably pull up the resolution myself, I guess. I don't, were they a significant impact on the design or?
No, I don't think so. I don't think any of the recommendations were significant. Just a little bit of extra screening on some of the hard edges.
That sounds good to me.
Nancy, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, that sounds good to me.
Okay, then do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
A second.
Okay, then all in favor, Armin?
Clarification again. So it's similar to the previous project where the conditions of approval will be modified to include the landscape consultant's comments and then the irrigation plan as well.
Yeah, the irrigation condition would apply to this one as well. Thank you. Okay, so with that, that would be the motion, and Armin seconded. So in favor, Armin?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
And John is aye. So thank you very much.
I really want to thank you guys tonight. You made me really, really happy. Michael is
Thanks, everybody.
Really,
Thanks a lot.
really impressive. Michael's putting out some amazing buildings here, and we're lucky to have him in our city. So I hope to do work with him for years, and I appreciate it. Nancy, again, thank you for your effort too. You all have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Okay, moving on in our agenda. There are no further hearings. Is there any other business under our item 8? Anyone?
We do need a staff liaison for this Friday's ARC.
I am not available Friday. I'm sorry.
Actually, me neither.
What time is it?
At 9 a.m. But if that time doesn't work for you, staff is available to meet with you at a later time on Friday.
I will be available at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Armin.
Sure.
Do any commissioners have any items to report? None there?
There.
Staff liaison reports, anything? Okay, then with that, I think we're ready to wrap it up and adjourn. I thank you, everybody. This meeting is adjourned. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.